spend most of our time in two main areas. That's IT infrastructure and performance. With our clients in almost every aspect of the IT infrastructure, providing consultancy, sales, installation, and ongoing support in areas such as virtualization, security, storage, Office 365, and of course SharePoint. A blended learning provider. We have various delivery methods, from your traditional classroom-based to virtual classroom and learning, and that's in areas such as your IT technical, IT applications, and professional skills as well. Anthony? Of course, we're Office 365 and SharePoint experts. We provide the end-to-end solution from planning, installation, way through to your end user training. All from me. As I said, I don't want to keep you long, just to provide an overview of what we do. So unless there's any questions at this stage, I'll pass you across to Duncan. Duncan.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everybody. Just a couple of slides on Nintex and where we're positioned in the marketplace and their sort of street cred, and we'll move on to a demonstration. It's a Microsoft partner based in Australia. They work purely in the SharePoint market. They've had the workflow tool available since 2003. First came out for SharePoint 2003, and they've subsequently updated product as SharePoint has updated, and they've also put a lot more features into their workflow tool. Also now you can also get Nintex for Office 365. They have a product that was in that market space, and they also have a product they released a couple of years ago, but they're working a lot more on, which is called Nintex Forms, which allows you to create browser-based forms and also device-based forms. We'll be having a webinar on that early in the new year. A replacement for InfoPath. Some of you may have heard that Microsoft are no longer going to have an InfoPath product in Office. But let's say Chris will send out some dates of when we have the Nintex Forms. So who is Nintex? They are the leading SharePoint workflow provider. They got 5 million plus licensed users around the world. It's across 4,000 odd customers. They have a partner network that does reselling, that does training, does consultancy, and so on. And they operate in 90 odd countries. But quite nicely for them, based in Sydney, Australia. So it is a very mobile product. Couple of things we can do along the workflow route is people on smart devices, tablets, laptops, smartphones, and so on. They can still do their workflow tasks on any of those devices. So what does it bring in? The workflow markets, the workflow creation as provided by Microsoft is not very good, unless you're a very, very good Visual Studio developer. There are very basic out-of-the-box workflows, which are very limiting. You could then move up into SharePoint Designer, which is far more flexible, but still extremely limiting. And the other Microsoft option is off into Visual Studio and full-blown coding. None of those three options in the Microsoft world as provided are graphical at all. So it's very difficult for a user to see what the workflow is doing. So Nintex is a completely graphic design interface. As you'll see, there are 100 plus different actions that you can use. A very clever management tool, so you could log in to SharePoint and it would just show you all of your outstanding tasks that have been assigned to you from any Nintex workflow anywhere in your SharePoint farm. It does make them very easy, as you'll see. I don't know if any of you have tried creating workflows yet. you will see as we go through the demonstration that Nintex is very easy. It does make process exceptionally powerful. You can model work as it does actually happen, and you can graphically see what's going to happen. You can actually put a lot of governance around your workflows, because we can also have version control in the workflows. So as your process changes, you can just update the workflow, and if the updated workflow is not suitable, you can quite easily just roll back to the previous version of the workflow. We can also schedule workflows. So instead of relying on somebody doing something in SharePoint to initiate a workflow, you may have some business logic that happens on a daily, weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis, and you can just design the workflows and just schedule them to happen on the what is the schedule need. To everything, yes, it does. The limitation of the built-in workflows in SharePoint and SharePoint Designer is that everything you wanted to talk to and everything you wanted to process must exist in your SharePoint site or SharePoint site collection. That is a limitation of those products. It's not a limitation of workflow. What we can do with Nintex workflows is you can connect to anything. You can connect to SQL databases. You can connect to any other system, provided it exposes data as a web service. You can quite easily connect to and talk to any system you want. It's also very easy and very intuitive for people to use. Okay. Just a couple of benefits of this. It works purely in SharePoint, and it is purely browser-based. Things that we mentioned there, it's just design interface, some very clever tracking and reporting tools. You could also create a Nintex thing called an action. So if you want to design something that potentially needs some credentials, you're designing a workflow that talks to a database and has to log into the database and then put some information out of that database. With the Nintex interface, you would have to put in usernames and passwords so that Nintex can go and talk to the SQL server. By packaging that up as an action, other people working within the workflow, they can't get in to see what those user credentials are. And it can also talk to cloud services, and the forms work on any device. So it doesn't necessarily have to work through a browser. You could design your form and get it to be optimized for an iPhone, for a Google device, for a Windows phone, and then even for other smart devices, tablets, and so on. Looking to cloud services as the second last bullet point there, they're talking about systems, databases, web services, and cloud services. This is a guess the product screen for you, so good luck guessing all of those. You can connect straight to Drop if you want to. We've just done one with a client who communicates with their external partners and shares data using Dropbox. So what they're doing is they're sourcing data, they're creating data in their SharePoint libraries. They're using Nintex Workflow to upload it to Dropbox and then email the client, letting them know the contents there. And then also poll within the workflow, they're polling that Dropbox account every three hours. And if there's any new content uploaded by the client, the workflow is just putting a copy of that straight onto their SharePoint system. But you see all of them there. There's Dropbox, there's Yammer, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, and they are constantly adding more and more into them. It's this concept called Nintex Live. No additional cost to that. If you do buy Nintex, either the standard or the enterprise version, you automatically get a license to connect to Nintex Live. Questions up there, if you just want to type them in for Mike in the chat section. Just one thing, a number of people have asked in the past, there is a SharePoint standard, obviously, and there's a SharePoint Enterprise, and there is a Nintex standard and a Nintex Enterprise. They don't map, so if SharePoint standard, but you want all of the Nintex Enterprise features, then you can buy those two products work. Likewise, if you have SharePoint Enterprise, but you only want the standard version of Nintex, you can also do that. A lot of people start off that they buy the standard version of Nintex, and as you get more sophisticated with it, you want to start using some of the other options. Current licensing model with Nintex is if you have the standard and you want to upgrade to the Enterprise version, all you need to do is pay the difference. Okay, no questions. I'll just move into a demo. So what I've got here, this is, I've had a problem with my 2030 image this morning, but what I've got here is Nintex in a SharePoint 2010 environment. The interface from a text point of view is exactly the same. The SharePoint looks a little bit different. So how we start off Nintex workflows in any library, in any list. You're probably all familiar. So we're in a library here. Let's say list tools. If we were in a list, we can create workflows over here from this icon on the right-hand side, and clicking on there. Doing these here, adding a workflow. That's where you can add in out-of-the-box workflows. You can see we can create workflows with SharePoint Designer, and if you have the Nintex product enabled, we can also create workflows here. By doing this in a library or in a, you're creating a workflow that's going to run on the content that goes into that library or goes into that list. If you create or schedule workflows, we can also come to site actions and for here under Nintex Workflow, and we can create site workflows. Yeah? And we can also create reusable templates. We can schedule site workflows and so on, and we can create site collection reusable templates here. Site collection reusable templates can be exported, imported to the central admin website, and then distributed across all site collections in your server farm. But they start off from a starting point of view. If we want to create a workflow, this is the interface that we get as a starting point. Comes with a template, obviously, but it also comes with some other pre-configured workflow templates that need to go a little bit further with. None of these will do exactly what you're looking for, but you would need to customize them and tweak them a little bit for your process and for internal staff and so on. So let's say I want to start off with a blank workflow on create, and this is the interface that we get, and this is how you build up your workflow. A little bit here, you see this Nintex Live icon is great. I don't have this image connected to the internet currently, so that's why that's great. If you're doing this on a server that does have internet connection, it will allow you to connect Nintex Live and to Dropbox and so on. The interface is down the left-hand side here, a little bit like Visio. There are a load of different categories that Nintex have put together, and within there are all the different workflow actions. The thing that I'm demonstrating is the enterprise version of Nintex. The version looks exactly like this, but it doesn't have a number of these items here. It doesn't have the provisioning option. Allows you to get close to do things in Active Directory, put you into Active Directory groups, create Active Directory users, and so on. Other things we can do here, enable linked and offered communication server, and provision the user with a mailbox and so on. So that's just an example of some of the items that are only available in the version. But what you do is you just start building up your workflow. There's this little yellow icon here. So either drag things across and just drop them onto there. What you can also do is if you just click on there and you insert actions, you can also browse through everything that's available there. So just a couple of things going through these. If we look at the integration options here, you can connect to any web service you want. You just drop that in there. Every one of these actions, if it has a little yellow warning triangle on it, and then it hasn't been configured correctly at that point in time. So what we need to do is click on the drop down, click on configure. I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is where you need to put in the URL of the web service you want to talk to and the username and password. So just the credentials to be able to connect to that web service. Items here where they're talking about create CRM records and connecting to CRM. That's not to any CRM system. It is specifically to the Microsoft CRM system. If you have a different CRM system potentially, but if it does expose services as web services, then you could connect to it. The web service call. We can run SQL state. So you could connect directly to a SQL database and run SQL statements on there. Business connectivity service, querying X services. You can make a direct query to Active Directory if you want to via an LDAP query. Or in the SharePoint world, if you have the standard or the enterprise version, you could potentially do that a whole lot easier just by querying directly into the user profile service. A couple of other options there. Libraries and lists. Lots of things that I've got a workflow that I'm going to demonstrate to you just now. But this is interacting with content in a library or content in a list. So to check something in, we want to check something out. A very useful thing, lots of organizations try and do it. You just your Word documents that potentially HR generate all the policies, procedures, and in conditions and so on, and they manage those as Word documents. But what you want people to get and to see is you want them to have a PDF version of all of your policies and procedures and so on. You do that with anything that Microsoft provides unless you completely load it using Visual Studio. It's as simple as this in the Nintex world. You just drag that over, drop on there. You can click on config, and we just tell it where do we want to upload it to. All it's going to do is it's going to take the current items, any current Word document, and if I just put in the URL of my intranet, generally that's what companies do, and you just get it that it when the flow starts, it just takes that Word document, converts it to a PDF, and will automatically upload it to your intranet, and you can convert to any of those formats. So you'd come in there and select PDF. Delete some of these just to clean some of these things up a bit. Yeah. So the simple thing of doing. So let's say we've got a document that needs to be approved first before anybody else in the business can see it. So a couple of steps you might want in the business is the first thing we want an email to be sent off to the person, to the author of the document, just confirming that the document has been received and that it's been sent off for approval. So we could come in here, configure, And specify, so as with most things in SharePoint, if it's got a red asterisk with it, or a blue one, depending on the theme you're using in 2013 now, those are mandatory fields, so we need to fill something in there. And if we click on here, what we can do, number of things, we could select a specific person or a group from Active Directory, potentially want approval from people who don't work with us, so we need to put in their external email address. What we can do quite easily is, all we want here is this person here, initiator, that is the author of the document. Yeah? So we can just select them, and that email is going to go to who is the author of the document, and we now need to type something in the subject line. We can your submission, and then again we can come and find information about it. And here, item. So these are all the properties available in that document library or that list. So if I take that, the name field, so that's going to take the name of the file. Yeah, so we can type a bit more in here. Your documents. Yeah. So your document, and we insert a reference here again. Say yes, had been and who's it forwarded to? Simple thing in this example, let's say it's just being forwarded to your manager for approval. Okay. So who is your manager? This, as a property in Point, is reliant on the fact that on everybody's user account in Active Directory, have populated the manager field. Just automatically find whoever your manager is and notify them via email. I think good thing to do in each one of these actions that you put over, just put some useful in so you know what each one of these things are doing. If you don't title them, all the actions are called is the name of the action. So anything we can do. So we got an email to the author saying thank you for your email. Thank you for your content. What we can do now is this one here called assign a flex task, because we're now going to assign a task to the manager where they need to either reject or approve this content. Yeah, so notification to manager, and we come in here. And we want to assign this to. And let's get manager. So that's who we're going to assign it to. If we click here on the ribbon under task notification, this is the standard email that they would get. So a task has been assigned to you regarding this item. Yeah. So that would open up the document so they could read it. What they would then do within that email, they could then click on this option here. So click here to respond, and that will give them the ability to approve or reject the task. The document, and then click here will show them the current status of the workflow, and I'll go and demonstrate a number of these to you later. This is a message here that you can completely customize. A couple of things we can do here. We can allow people to delegate their task to somebody else in that box if you want to. And another one that is very useful is this thing called lazy approval. What it allows you to do is you can define a list of words show you here in the central admin website. For people that are on the road a lot, but they do need to be involved in approval processes. What lazy approval allows them to do is, if I'm on the road and on my smartphone, I get this email saying you need to approve, reject, or do something on an item. I could just click on reply to that email, and if I'm happy with it, I could just type the word yes, or I could type the word no, and just send that email back. And what you do is you define in the central admin whatever you want that means you have approved your task, or whatever words you want that mean the user has rejected their task. One of them that you get a lot requests for is, when a workflow kicks off, it's going to assign a task to somebody. They get that email right there and then. If you do that task right there and then, there's a good chance that they're going to forget that they need to do it. So you may want your workflow to send them. Now you can't do that in an out-of-the-box workflow. You can't do it in SharePoint design workflows, but quite easily here, I can just click on the reminder button. I can say, I want you to send out 3 reminders, 4 reminders even, okay, and send them out every second day, yeah, or send one out every 4 hours. What logic you want to model, and then you can get even more sophisticated, yeah, and only send the reminders out on business days, or only send them out during business hours. Yeah. So you're going to get the task notification. We're now going to get, let's put that back. We're now going to get, for the next 4 days, we're going to get a reminder every day until we do it. If we don't do it when we get the first mail, if I don't do under any of the 4 reminders that I get, I can then configure the email to just escalate this up. Yeah, and we can come in here to somebody else, and we can now delegate this off to somebody in the business. Okay, once you've got all of that configured, we can click on save. A couple of other things. We may want more than just a reject or an approve option here. Yeah, so we can come in here if we click on and we can add more outcomes into this. Just let it fire up. We've got approve and reject, but I could come in here and we could put in another request change. Yeah, and click on OK to that. And what that does is that just tap another leg in yeah. Okay, and then we can up whatever the process is once based on a change request. So all of these things that I'm showing you so far, they're going to run on a list. They're going to run on a library, and it is dependent on someone creating a document or editing a document, and then this process runs. What you can do on any workflow up at the top here is you can click on workflow settings, and you can define how the workflow starts. Yeah? So by default, the workflow needs to be started manually, but we could change it. We could say, I want this thing to automatically run as soon as somebody creates a document, or to run whenever a piece of existing content is modified. We can put some logic on that, and then you can build up whatever logic makes a workflow start. But the default behavior of any workflow, both out of the box and SharePoint Designer and Nintex, is they do need to be manually started, but you can change that. I'm not ready for this work to go live, but you need to go off and do something else, we can just click on Save. We give the workflow a name, and at any point in time, you can come back and open up that workflow and continue working on it. You are ready for it to be used. You need to publish workflow. That's the one that makes it run and start working in the user environment. Other things you can do, we can print the workflow out, which is a huge advantage over everything that Microsoft offer, because I can now print this out and I can send it off, and I can now go and sit with the people that are looking for the workflow, and we can quickly show them and say, is this exactly what you want? Two options here. If I just print it, it's going to print out. It's just going to print out the flow. It's not going to tell me what's been configured in each of these actions. If I can't print with notes, and put it there, same, but you see, sorry, let's just open that up again. If I click on with notes, you see down here in the bottom left, it's got a lot of text information about what's actually going on. So number one, it actually tells me what it's doing. As well, you're hopefully going to be building and testing your flows in your development environment. Once you're happy with it, we can then just export that as a file, okay, and then move that file over to your live environment. Come into a similar place and just click on import. So that allows you to very quickly move workflows across your system. So I've got here, just in another environment, I've created a library called permissions. I've created a couple of columns. I've got a column called Content Approver, and I've got a column called Final Approver. And sort of the place that we're looking at here is assume that the content that comes in here, the whole organization has got read access to this library. But the link that we're trying to model is that when authors put documents in here, we want the permissions to be replaced. That only the author and these two people here, just normal stock standard SharePoint columns, only the author, the content approver, and the final approver can actually see the document. When the workflow kicks off, we're going to configure those permissions. It's then going to send an email to the content approver, asking them to approve or reject the document. If the content approver approves it, it's going to email on to the final approver. If the final approver approves it, the last step in the workflow then does set the permissions on this document that everybody in the organization has got access to it. So looking at that workflow, if I come in here, on the tab on workflow settings, and we now want to manage workflows. So that's creating a brand new workflow. This is creating or editing workflows that already exist. That's our library. And there's the workflow there. Just that up. The process we've got here, the first thing it's doing is just sending a confirmation to the author, saying thanks, we've got your document. This is an action that sits here under libraries and lists, and it's one of these in under libraries and lists. One called item solution. So these are generally the more popular actions that you're going to be using, because these run on the content. So we can create items, we can copy stuff out of SharePoint onto a file share. We copy it somewhere else in SharePoint. We can get to create items in other sites. We can delete previous versions, delete items, set things as records. We can update items, various different things there. This one is just a set item permission, and all we need to do in the configuration of that. Is now specified. So do we want it to inherit permissions from the parent? No. Do we want to remove whatever permissions we've got? Yes, or no. Completely up to you. And what we can now specify via the name of the column. So the columns that we've created in our point library or list, I can reference those via the name of the column, and it's giving them, so we're remove whatever permissions this file is going to have, and we're going to replace it with those. In that step of the workflow, that's what's going on there. Then it's going to send an email to the content approver, who can reject or approve the content. Content approver, if they reject it, email goes back to the author. If they approve it, email goes to author. But now we have a task assigned to the final approver. They could reject it or they could approve it. And if it gets approved in both of those steps, then what we've got here is another item, set item permission box, which is setting it up with all sorts of different permissions here. But just let that pop up. Come on. Okay, that's taking a bit of time. I'll just cancel that down. So that is the design of the workflow. Just a couple other things we can do within workflows. If I just come back into here, the logic and flow. We can get it to loops. We can do a run if. So based on some other type of business logic, we can do a run if a certain condition is met, and you can go and define whatever that condition is. Lots of companies use that quite cleverly when users are, if you're using the check-in and check-out option and people are just leaving things checked out for long periods of time, you could have a run if. So if it's been checked out for more than 24 hours, then just check the document in. Another one is very, very popular and is not possible to do in out of the box or SharePoint Designer, is this concept of a state machine workflow. So this allows you to model business logic based on the fact that potentially nobody's creating content, nobody's editing content, but just have some sort of business logic that runs across all of the content that you have. And just as an example, say that we can in the states machine, and we can now just model up a couple of here. It's a document here. Let's say state 2 is awaiting approval, and we just add as many states in as we want. Yeah, so waiting approval. So yeah, waiting for your approval. Another date. Let's say saved and live to the business. Okay, and then we could come in here and say drawn as past expiry date. Yeah. It just builds up that logic for us. Yeah. So now we can come in and build up whatever logic we need within all of those. Lots of companies have this type of thing here where a document is withdrawn. It's a policy procedure type document. They potentially need to be reviewed on an annual basis. And if it hasn't been reviewed by its next review dates, then it has to be reviewed from validity to the business until it has been approved and until it's been updated by the relevant people, and then potentially gone back through your staging process. So these are quite useful documents that are always live in your business, but have to be viewed and revised on shared. The workflow that we've got here that runs on a document once it's been approved. That's it. It will never run on that document again. So showing you this, if we just kick this off, I've only got about 10, 15 minutes. So if I come in here and I come into this library, I've got the work. So there's the name of the workflow, and it's running on some of these documents, and it's notifying the people there. So I want to start this workflow. I'm in here. So pretty similar. The only thing that's new in this drop down, because we've got Nintex, are these two options here. This option you're probably all familiar with because it is there anyway out of the box. So I come in here, and now SharePoint out of the box workflows are visible to users. It's how SharePoint Designer workflows are visible to users. So when a user comes in here, they don't know what technology was used to create a workflow. So they just click on here, and E is just what the process is. They can't change any of this. You see, we can't edit any of these. Yeah? So we can hover over it. They can hover over these things, and they can see what's going to happen, but they can't change any of it. Okay. If you have that, or this might have been auto start based on however we've configured the workflow. We click start to that. And that's the workflow, and we see here now that it is in progress. Okay. So what we can do is we can come out once we've got a workflow running. We come in at any time, and we can hit the history, and we click on that. Nice graphic of where workflow is at this point in time. Yeah? So anything that's green has already been done. That's just an email that's gone out. That's just setting permissions item. So you see we've got to a decision point, so we can see that it's sitting now waiting for this person. And you can, as the author saying, I wonder what's going on, who am I waiting for? And if we hover over that, see the box pops up, and it tells us there that we're waiting for the user called in the magnet domain called administrator to do that. Eventually, once your workflow has completed, there will be a continuous line of green icons through the workflow, and that will show you the path that document took. Yeah. So if this reads it, that would go green, which means the rejection email to author would go green, and that's the end of the workflow. It goes through the whole approval routing. The green line would go down the right side here, and it would go all the way through there down to set item permissions. Another advantage of this, again, we can click on View Stats here, and then a little bit of information of how long each of these individual items took. Yeah, if we now click on that, so you can see how sent out. Yeah, so you can see. So it just starts building in stats of how long these durations of each of these things are actually taking. Advantage of this over, I don't know if any of you have tried the SharePoint workflows or SharePoint Designer workflows. This information, once a workflow has completed, so once we've got this path through the flow, if that was a Microsoft out-of-the-box workflow, SharePoint Designer workflow, 6 days after completion, all of that history of that workflow gets deleted, and there's nothing you can do about that. In the Nintex world, all of this information is logged in a separate Nintex database that you can keep forever if you want to, but it is a control number. We don't have that an option. We don't have in the out-of-the-box workflows. Okay, looking back here through some of the other options to show you here. So we've gone through the logic and flow. We've got the Nintex live things. Other things we can do. We can get it to calculate a date some stage in the future. We can get it to extract strings. You can get it to end a workflow. Get it to log in the history log. Do some sort of maths options. Pause for, so you want something to happen and then you want it to wait for however you want it to wait for. You could just put a sort of a breather in your workflow. Years, months, days, hours. So we want to pause for 50 minutes and then move on to the rest of the workflow. Again, potentially doing business hours only. We can receive data, we can set a workflow status. One of the very useful things we can do, which is again not available in the Microsoft offerings, is you can get one workflow to start another workflow. Some companies start doing it as you start mapping out your process. You find that some are very big and quite long, and complex. You can break them down into shorter, more manageable processes, so that at the end of one process, that just be it. Or at the end of one process, you might want to automatically start the next process on it. Okay. Provision here, we've seen these. These are available in the enterprise version of Nintex. And user interactions here. Again, two things here that are only available in the enterprise version is we could get it to create a task in this Outlook task list. You could also get the end result of some process. Could also create an appointment in a user's calendar. So those again only available in the enterprise version of SharePoint. Along that one, get meeting suggestions. Just a little quick run through there, showing you some of the options. And as you can see, it is a really nice, easy graphical interface to work with. You can logically build up and map out the process. Like you might want sometimes to test a workflow and you think that something's causing trouble in your workflow. And out of the box SharePoint Designer, you'd have to delete the bits that you think are causing trouble. What we can do in here, though, is I can come into here and I can just disable parts of this if I want to. Yeah. So there. So instead of having to completely delete items from your workflow, only to realize you do need them back. You can just disable them, and at any point you want, come in and enable them, and that makes them live. Okay. A couple things just to show you here is creating site templates. Creating a site workflow is exactly the same as creating a list or a library workflow. You have all the same actions. You have all of the same options available down the left-hand side. But what you can then do is, so instead of running specifically on a library or running on a list, we can then come in and we can actually schedule those workflows to run. So we could get it to go and run over all of libraries or certain libraries and lists, maybe something that runs overnight, some type of overnight process you want to run. Okay, thank you very much. I'll hand you back to Chris if you've got any questions, and I'll see if any have come through to Mike. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Duncan. Excellent demonstration as always. I hope everyone found that as interesting as we did. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask them now in the chat facility. We will be sending a recording of this webinar out probably next week. If in the meantime you have any questions around Nintex or SharePoint, please feel free to get in touch with myself or Mike. Thank you again for attending this morning. Thanks.